Will Brill is a Tony nominee this season for Stereophonic. I'm David Buchanan with Gold Derby. First, Will, a hearty congratulations on your first Tony nomination.
Thank you so much. It's a thrill.
Yeah, this is obviously not your first time on Broadway. I think this is your fourth show.
That's right.
So what does it mean, to get nominated, not only just, personally, but for this show in particular? Like, how meaningful is it that this is your first nomination?
Well, this show I started working on. I mean, this show means the world to me for all kinds of reasons. I worked on this show for the first time in early 2016, um, when it was like a first draft. It was wildly different. It was a lot longer. It was it was yeah, just a very different beast. And I actually was like around present for the first workshop of it when the first like 7 pages were written, and that's where I met David for the first time. And he sort of like nonchalantly off the cuff said to me in the middle of a sentence, he broke himself off and was like, I think you're going to be in this play. And then he kept talking about whatever he was talking about. And he had never seen me on stage before. Um, I I had seen one of his plays that I was obsessed with, stunning. So to and then we did a workshop of it, and I thought, oh, I don't know that this will ever be anything. It was so crazy, it was so beautiful, but it was so unlike anything else. I sort of said maybe this will be a fun thing to play with for a while, but never imagined that it would be a play with music, with gorgeous songs, and then go to Broadway and then get nominated for a bunch of Tonys is crazy town. And really, really exciting. And to have seen it all along the way and seen David all along the way and Daniel Aachen, like it's so moving. It's really exciting.
Yeah, and I just want to note for folks who maybe haven't seen the show, you actually are playing those beautiful songs live. So I wanted to ask you exactly about that. First, what
Sure.
most appealed to you about Reg, the character that you play, because it's such an incredible role. And how much of the bass, like, were you familiar with the bass? Are you a bass player? And how did you get up to speed, to perform these songs, 8 times?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in so I knew what a bass was, and that was basically it. Like I knew what it was and I knew what it sounded like. Um but so the first thing that really appealed to me about Reg was, I mean, my clearest memory of those early workshops was the houseboats. There's a scene where I talk about houseboats quite a lot, and in the first draft of the play, that speech was something like, or that scene was like 30 pages long. It's like 10 pages long now, and it was this, and it was so funny. I mean, we used to just sit there and crack each other up like crazy during that scene, to the point where you really could not tell what was real and what wasn't. Um, and that was like such a transcendently cool experience. And Reg is a person who I really identify a lot with. He's such an underdog, and he's so self-destructive, which I in another lifetime of Will Brill was like very much the same way. And so there's a lot that like calls to me about him. But when it came time, there was a day when Daniel Aachen called me and he said, you know, we're going to have to cast a real bass player in this role. Do you play bass? And I said, no, but I'll learn. And he said, uh, we will look elsewhere. Thank you. In like a very nice way. But I disappeared from the thing for like 6 years. Yeah. And then, he reached back out when there was you know what it was in 2020, I found out that the show was supposed to happen again, and so I went out and bought a bass and uh convinced the creative team to set me up with the musical director Justin Craig, and so that I could learn what I needed for the auditions. And I was like, I'm gonna drill this, I'm gonna learn it. And then the world ended, and there was no, and then I just had this bass, but I still didn't really start learning it until after we did a reading of the show last year in like March, April of last year. And then I have an old friend, Robbie Mangano, who taught me how to look like I was playing guitar for a movie. And I went to him and said, I need a crash course on bass. Can you teach me? And he taught me really remarkably well. I mean, and so, yeah, these are the songs I play in the show are the only songs I play on the bass as of now. I intend to learn more, but it's so fun. I mean, it's maybe the most fun part of the play is playing music, which I never thought I'd really be able to do in front of 800 people every day. It's crazy.
Yeah, and the cast album drops this Friday, so I can't wait to dive into all the songs. You mentioned Reg's self-destructive behavior, and I think what's so interesting to me is I think Reg actually has one of the more positive arcs over the course of the play where we meet
Totally.
a pretty low point. It gets a little bit worse, in
Yeah.
Acts 1 and 2. But then by the end of the play, he seems to be in such a better personal,
Yeah.
not professional space as well. So how do you kind of see that arc, and what is it like to bring a character that far over the course of 3 hours and 20 some odd minutes?
I mean, it's a joy. It is so rewarding to get to play the breadth of a human experience. And Reg really does go through the highs and lows. And I'm very moved by his journey because it's one that you don't see a lot in theater. Like, generally speaking, you see people at sort of their status quo, and then you see things fall apart and unravel. And so it's rare that we get the opportunity, and I think very, very moving when we get the opportunity in art to witness somebody bettering themselves. Because it's something that we are all actively trying to take part in, for our own well-beings, and is super difficult. So it's really, really gratifying. And it's very moving to me that I think, all of the characters I'm not talking out of turn. David would appreciate this too. I think all of the characters are in some facet David Adjemi. It's like he took his psyche and split it into 7 people. And I feel really lucky and honored that Reg is the guy who is really bringing in hope at the end of the play and is saying life can be worth living and life is like a beautiful gift, which is a really hard journey for some of us to take. And I just feel lucky that I get to be the voice of that.
You mentioned the houseboat monologue earlier, which, the night I saw the play, the audience could not have loved it more. It is absolutely
Yeah.
hilarious. You play it pitch perfectly.
Thanks.
I wanted to ask you 2 questions about it. First, how much are you feeding off the audience? Like, how much can you hear that riotous response, and how does that inform the performance? And then also, what I think is so lovely about it is Reg says some really profound things in that monologue,
Yeah.
especially when he says something along the lines of, he wants to be able to live in art.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to ask you about those 2 facets. Like, how much does the audience play into it? And what do you find so kind of moving about that very long, but also hilarious speech?
Yeah, somebody said something that really I felt gave me a great honor. That monologue has always felt like, when acting is the most fun is when it feels like the playwright has invented you. And there is a sense when I step into that monologue, it just feels really like I'm opening a door or a window onto a part of myself that I didn't know was there, and I get to share it with a room full of people, which is like profoundly gratifying. And it's always spoken to me in that way because I think my among my favorite things to do in life is to make people laugh. I truly love it. There is another funny thing though. I mean, that monologue is so riotous and the reaction of the other 2 boys on stage is so ebullient that you run the risk of letting the audience experience take over the thing. And so the tragedy of it is that I have to keep the monologue going, and I don't have a lot of time to sit with the audience and their experience. I have to make sure that the thing keeps getting communicated and that we keep moving along, because we're doing a 3 hour, 20-minute play and it's got to move. But that scene, without any changes occurring to it, in our first preview at Playwrights Horizons, that scene was 17 and a half minutes long. It currently runs at 10 and a half minutes. So it's a really complicated thing. I love it so much. And it is also a real piece of machinery that we all, I think all three of us who are in that scene love playing that scene. It's such a delight. And then, yeah, I think it's such a meta experience because the language is so delicious. The haze of the drugs is so delicious. And then the sentiment of, I want to be surrounded by beauty and I have stumbled upon this mythological thing that nobody else is privy to, or that this whole like group of people, how many of us have had dreams, where you stumble upon a society that nobody has discovered, and like this is what Reg is experiencing, and he gets to like tell his friends and guide them on the way. It's such a profoundly beautiful thing. And also it is always a delight to play a person who is making discoveries about himself, and in that moment he's discovering that he wants to surround himself with art, and that he cares less about fame than maybe he does about just living amongst the joys of life and the terrors of life and all of that.
Yeah, you're working with 6 other incredible performers. But I would have to ask you most especially about Juliana Canfield, because Holly and Reg have, in some ways the closest relationship, also in parts the most tumultuous. It's that early scene in Act 1 or 2 before the intermission where Holly decides to leave the house, and the intensity between the two of you. There's so little dialogue, but the intensity between the two of you is so palpable. It's such a powerful moment. I just wanted to ask you about, exploring that dynamic with her and doing it at Playwrights here, and how has it evolved, and what is it like, just to play opposite her?
First of all, thank you for asking about Juliana. I love her so much. I feel so lucky to be able to do this with her. So the first time I met Juliana was when we did that. Well, I guess I met her once before that, but then we did this reading together, and she started talking, and I immediately, first thought through my head was like, you have to up your game. You have to be better at acting than you currently are, because she is so real and so available. And so something that I think to myself all the time is that there's no Reg without Juliana Canfield as Holly. Like, I don't know how people will do this play without Juliana as Holly. She's so devastating and so facile. Like, she works in like any setting, and she's like strong as a horse. She's just like so tough and gritty, and it's really, really delightful. I feel so lucky that I get to be doing this with her. I literally like think about it every day. It's very cool.
There's another scene that you brought up earlier that is also profound. You get such really delicious moments to dive into, but it's that scene opposite Grover where, Grover not having a good day, and you kind of tell him, life should be about enjoyment, and he totally doesn't agree with you. I just wanted to ask you about how that dialogue resonates with you personally, because I have to imagine, this work is hard work. This show is long. You're doing it 8 times a week. But I have to imagine you are enjoying it so much. So, how does kind of putting that out into the universe that, life should be about enjoyment, how does that resonate with you in this moment in time?
I mean, it resonates with me so much, and it didn't at another, at other times in my life. But it feels really good to be playing somebody who I can just like no holds barred agree with completely on that sentiment. I think it's a really like beautiful thing being able to say the thing that you will and you Reg think like out loud is really moving. And I also think that scene is so moving because those that is one of the scenes that to me feels so clearly like one person having an argument with himself. And I know that Grover and Reg have each been in each other's positions and happen to be on the sides that they are right now. But I mean, I think we've all gotten in that particular fight with ourselves, and it is a really, really scary one. Uh, but I love getting to enjoy myself and to enjoy life. It's really very cool.
Before I let you go, Will, I have to ask you about the end of the play because it ends so ambiguously. I mean, it ends at such a beautiful point, but we really don't know what the future holds for this group, for its individual members. And when I was talking to Sarah, she had
Mm-hmm.
her own ideas, and she said, "Oh, we all talk about it, backstage about what we think is going to happen." So, where do you think these characters go after we see, the end of the show? What is next for Reg, who, like we said, seems to be out of everybody in perhaps the best place mentally
Yeah.
of the group.
Yeah, I wrestle with this a lot. I go back and forth. I think it's sort of up in the air what could happen to them. We know from the play that they have had an album become a number one hit, but the sort of the thing that I think everybody assumes but nobody knows for sure is that this album is a hit. Like this album could be a flop. It could do nothing for anyone, and it could have destroyed their relationships ultimately for very little payoff. And what kind of spiral would that send these characters into? I don't know. I think that Reg's um, piece that he has found is a tenuous one, and I think that I worry about him intermittently. Some days I feel like he's really going to make it, and other days I think he is around the corner from another crisis that is going to maybe be the last one that he has. There are days when I think he and Holly are getting back together. There are days when I think this is the last time they ever see each other. There are days when I think they're secretly already back together and not telling anyone. It's like it changes so often, and the play is so rich that it will accommodate all of these bizarre theories, which I love about it. And I think really, really good writing uh, is like deep as the ocean. There's just infinite possibilities, and also like the ocean is like will buoy you. Like the salt water keeps you afloat.
It's an incredibly rich play and an incredibly rich performance. Will, congratulations again on
Thanks.
the Tony nomination. Congratulations on Stereophonic. Thank you for talking to Gold Derby today.
Thank you so much for having me.